How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to share with you one of the very well kept secrets of the camera world that comes in the form of this camera that's got phenomenal build quality, very sturdy construction, weather sealing, all magnesium alloy construction. It is also equipped with 5-axis image stabilization that allows you to take photographs at pretty low shutter speeds while keeping your ISO as low as possible. It also has excellent photographic capabilities. You can shoot in the RAW format or JPEG format. And 60 megapixels is a resolution of your sensor, which is plenty, not even for beginners, but even for more advanced users or for photography enthusiasts, even for people who shoot professionally. This might even appeal to you as well. And as I said, it's got weather sealing. It also has excellent videographic capabilities as well. You can't really shoot in a log format, but it's good enough that allows you a lot of room for post-processing. You can push your highlights and shadows and color saturation and the vibrance and so on and so forth. So, and you can shoot in 1080p, 60 frames per second, which is progressive, which is pretty good resolution that still gives you some room for doing some artistic slow motion as well. Now, it doesn't shoot 4K. If you're after shooting 4K, then this camera doesn't really appeal to you. So you have to go get a camera that can shoot 4K videos. Just like the one with which I'm filming this, which is the Lumix GH4. Now that one is devoid of any sort of in-body image stabilization. It's reliant on optical stabilization that's built into your lens. Yeah, but this, if you're not concerned about 4K, this is a phenomenal camera. I mean, when you hold it in your hand, you can feel that you're holding a pretty high quality product. As I said, weather sealing, and just a beautiful design as well. I mean, this is reminiscent of the OM cameras that Olympus used to make back in the days, and those were also very technically advanced, and they gave you excellent build quality again. And yeah, pretty good cameras. Now, this, or I should say, Olympus subscribes to the Micro Four Thirds format. So the sensor that you find inside this camera, that's the silicone chip. So it's got a sensor that's half the size of a 35 millimeter sensor, or full frame sensor, I should say. And it's a smaller, so you get a crop factor of ×2, which is okay. If you put a lens like this is a Olympus 45mm f1.8. So this becomes a 90 millimeter on a full frame setup. But it goes all the way down to 1.8, so you can achieve excellent shallow depth of field, great bokeh or bokeh, however you pronounce it, and yeah, just a beautiful camera. Now, when you buy a camera like this, you're not just buying the camera, you're basically subscribing to an ecosystem that features cameras and lenses. Now, the advantage of the Micro Four Thirds format is that any lens that's made by Olympus or Panasonic that's made for the Micro Four Thirds format can be mounted on this camera. This happens to be Olympus 45mm f1.8. As I said, it becomes a 90 millimeter on a full frame format. It's a good portrait lens, also can be also a general purpose lens for like street photography, and excellent optical quality. This is really a masterpiece of optical engineering. And but this doesn't have in-body image stabilization, so you want to mount this on an Olympus camera that's got built-in image stabilization. Now, I think for the past few years, every camera that Panasonic made, or for the most part, most of the cameras they made, they came with image stabilization, but like prior to 2015, I think, or 14, the cameras were devoid of that feature. So they were reliant on image stabilization that's built into your lens. Whereas with this, any lens I mount on this camera will be image stabilized because it's got in-body image stabilization, and it's excellent actually. I'm not going to claim that it can go as low as a shutter speed of like 1 second, but with the some of the newer cameras that Olympus has produced, I think you have the capability. Like the professional model, Olympus E-M5, that does seem to give you the ability to really keep your shutter speed pretty low, maybe 2 seconds. I've heard some people have done that. I'm not sure, I've never tried any of those cameras. I mean, also the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, I think that also has that ability. Pretty good image stabilization. Now, this camera replaced the Olympus OMD EM5, the original camera that was an excellent camera, but didn't have the flip out screen, and didn't have the microphone input. Now that's another feature. If you're a vlogger, if you're a YouTuber, this might be a camera that may appeal to you because it's got a flip out screen, fully articulating, which is beautiful. You can take selfies, or you can vlog with this camera. It's got the built-in image stabilization, so you can keep the camera steady and while you're filming yourself. It also has the microphone input. I was just waiting for the helicopter to pass. It also has the microphone input, so you can connect your microphone into this microphone jack on the camera, and that's my preferred way of recording my voice over my video, as opposed to recording externally. You can do that as well. You can get a voice recorder and record externally, and then synchronize your audio and video later in post-processing. But my preferred way of doing it, or like the most simplified way of doing it, is to record onto your camera, but your camera needs to have a microphone jack. So this camera does give you that ability as well. Some of the lenses I recommend is obviously this 45. This is probably the first purchase you got to make, because you can take those kind of professional photographs with a blurred background, the bokeh, autofocus background, and also a good portrait lens for street photography may also be relevant for nature photography. Also, taking photographs of nature like leaves and fruits. This comes in pretty handy. Now, on top of the Olympus 45 f1.8, which is a good portrait lens, also a good general purpose lens as well, I recommend the Lumix 25mm f1.7. It's a pretty inexpensive lens, but excellent optical quality, and it's got a metal mount as well, which adds to the sturdiness of the lens. I mean, people hold this in their hands and they say, well, this is pretty cheap quality, but it really isn't. You shouldn't really judge this lens by how it feels in your hand, but when you put it on your camera and take photographs with it, it's pretty sharp. Even wide open, it's plenty sharp. I mean, to get the best sharpness out of this, I would kind of slow it down to like f2.5 or so, but then you're sacrificing your ability to kind of blur your background. So I prefer to keep it at f1.7 and take that a bit of a loss in image quality, but I much prefer to shoot my lenses wide open, so I can achieve that the bokeh kind of blurred background. Another lens I recommend is the lens with which I'm filming this, which is the Lumix 7-14. It's a pretty wide field of view. It's a great lens, excellent build quality, and it does have in-body image stabilization, and that's why I've put it on my Lumix GH4. I could very well put it on the Olympus OMD E-M5 Mark II, but I think since it doesn't have the power on or off button for the image stabilization, I think the built-in optical stabilization will override the one that's built into Olympus. Either way, I've got image stabilization, so I'm pretty happy about that. Now, the only weakness of this camera that I can think of is its autofocusing capabilities during shooting video. Now, if you want to shoot video with this camera, make sure that you manually focus your lens and also take advantage of the excellent focus peaking capability that this camera offers you. But it just doesn't have too advanced of an algorithm that allows you to continuously track your subject when you're shooting video. So this is unfortunately devoid of that feature. Now, the successor to this camera, which is the E-M5 Mark III and also the OMD E-M1 Mark II, I think they received a firmware update not too long ago that gave the user the ability to continuously autofocus their subject when they're shooting video, and it seems to be working pretty well. But if you're concerned about continuous autofocus capabilities of a camera, I think you should also gravitate towards the Sony a6100. That one has excellent autofocusing capabilities, continuous autofocusing capabilities when it comes to shooting video. But with this, I don't mind that. I don't mind kind of manually focus my lens, especially when I'm shooting with the 7-14. I can always kind of manually focus my lens and also set my aperture at 5.6 or maybe 6 or so, and then everything is pretty much in focus because it's a pretty wide angle lens. So I don't have any problem in that respect. But yeah, but if you're concerned about autofocusing capabilities, yeah, this, when it comes to shooting video, doesn't do that good of a job. But overall, Excellent camera and beautiful high resolution electronic viewfinder. Excellent build quality, very sturdy, all made out of magnesium alloy, weather sealing, 5-axis image stabilization. You can shoot RAW and JPEG, 16 megapixels. So if you're someone who's using your smartphone for taking photographs, if you want to elevate your photographs and videos to higher standards, then this is a camera that might appeal to you. Or even if you're a photography student, instead of always just focusing on a Canon or a Nikon camera, Olympus is also a pretty viable option. Now I'm going to share with you a hidden feature of this camera. If you recall earlier, I said that this camera can shoot pretty high quality video at full HD. You can shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second. And this also gives you the ability to adjust your highlights and shadows and push your dynamic range if you shoot in a very specific format called the all infra. Now it's like a hidden feature, it's kind of buried in menus. So I'm going to show you where to find it. First of all, you want to push the menu button, right? And you want to come all the way down to the gear icon, right? So go to the right and go further down until you find the movie option. So hit OK on that. And then you're going to go further down where you find movie specification settings. So hit OK on that. And then what you need is all infra. So you can shoot normal, fine, super fine, which is even a higher resolution compared to fine, and then all infra. Now this is not a log format, but it's pretty close. It gives you a lot of room for post-processing. So this is like a hidden feature of this camera. So you really have to explore all the menus before you can come across this. So I'm just sharing this with you. And I hope you put this camera to some good use when it comes to videography. Yeah. Now I'm going to show you another excellent feature of this camera. It's the built-in HDR feature that allows you to create this multi-exposure blending that results in a high dynamic range photograph. Now, the way to activate it is pretty simple. All you have to do is just push the HDR button up there, and then you'll see that it says HDR up there, and just focus your camera. So you can see that we're shooting at 1/500th of a second. So it takes 3 exposures. One at -2. You can actually set that accordingly. So my preference is to go -2 exposure and 0 and then +2. So let's try that here. So it's still high enough shutter speed, and with built-in image stabilization, I don't necessarily have to worry about it that much, unless I'm shooting at like 2-3 frames per second. And then yeah, so then that's your photograph. Now the other what you'll notice is if you're shooting an HDR photograph and you try to adjust your ISO, you'll notice that you can't actually go below ISO 200. But if you go out of the HDR mode, go to the quick menu, you can see that you can actually go to lower ISO than 200, maybe ISO 100. But when you're shooting HDR, actually the lowest you can go is ISO 200. Still pretty good, and yeah, wonderful. Wonderful feature of this camera. Let's shoot another HDR. Yeah, excellent. Anyways, that's pretty much all I had to say with regards to this camera and Micro Four Thirds format in general. It will be an enormous honor if you subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up and like this video. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much. Have a great day.